As I'm sure you've all heard by now, Google has announced its alliance with the ADL in an effort to control controversial topics here on YouTube. Google just wants to protect you from videos you're too sensitive to watch. YouTube's new stranglehold on content will ultimately silence free speech, and its algorithms label dissenting opinions as controversial. The problem is the definition of controversial videos seems to be pretty vague, but from what's getting taken down, it would appear that anything GoogleTube doesn't like is controversial. As I mentioned in my prior video about VidCon, and again in my last video, YouTube has made its agenda quite clear. So, the rollout of wholesale censorship is upon us, and people all around me are having their videos demonetized, some people are losing subscribers at an alarming rate, not to mention some YouTubers have had their channels and its associated Gmail accounts deleted, leaving those people with no voice and no platform. I personally have seen my comments vanish off of videos. I just figured the channel was deleting the comments until I heard several channels talking about this and they said they didn't delete comments. Soon, if not already, all right-wing leaning channels will have their videos demonetized or worse, put into limbo. I'm just wondering when this channel will get hit, because it will. Now, what's truly hilarious and ironic is the latest turn of events at Google. It all started a few days ago with the Google letter, where a Google software engineer wrote a memo to his employer, Google. He was wondering if maybe Google had become a far-left echo chamber, and ultimately became a martyr for free speech. He wrote a 10-page letter that the MSN is calling a anti-diversity memo. Here's how it opens. I value diversity and inclusion, am not denying that sexism exists, and don't endorse using stereotypes. When addressing the gap in representation in the population, we need to look at population-level differences in distributions. If we can't have an honest discussion about this, then we can never truly solve the problem. Well, this already sounds like typical SJW nonsense, with one exception. It's rational. He goes on. Psychological safety is built on mutual respect and acceptance, but unfortunately, our culture of shaming and misrepresentation is disrespectful and unaccepting of anyone outside this echo chamber. Despite what the public response seems to have been, I've gotten many personal messages from fellow Googlers expressing their gratitude for bringing up these very important issues which they agree with but would never have the courage to say or defend because of our shaming culture and the possibility of being fired. This needs to change. Sorry, that's just funny. In a section labeled Google's Biases, he states, at Google, we talk so much about unconscious bias as it applies to race and gender, but we rarely discuss our moral biases. Political orientation is actually a result of deep moral preferences and thus biases. Considering that the overwhelming majority of the social sciences, media, and Google lean left, we should critically examine these prejudices. Out of the horse's mouth. He lists the biases of both the left and the right, and then explains the possible non-biased causes of the gender gap in tech, then states the obvious differences between men and women that any sane person would say, well, yeah, obviously. He even discusses non-discriminatory ways to reduce the gender gap, and basically states several points, including women on average show a higher interest in people and men in things. Women on average are more cooperative. And women on average look for more work-life balance, while men have a higher drive for status on average. Okay, this is an aside, but Google knows these things. This is what Google does. It collects information. It collects data. It collects everything. He also gives detailed descriptions of how these issues could be fixed. Then he tosses in The male gender role is currently inflexible. Feminism has made great progress in freeing women from the female gender role, but men are still very much tied to the male gender role. If we, as a society, allow men to be more feminine, then the gender gap will shrink. Although, probably because men will leave tech and leadership for traditionally feminine roles. Now, this really sounds like total far left garbage. Why would this guy get in trouble? Seriously. I mean, come on, this sounds completely like far left feminist propaganda. What could be wrong with this? I would encourage you to read the Google letter yourself, because this Google software engineer, James Damore, confirms what I've been saying this whole time about GoogleTube's leftist agenda. Then, in one of the most ironic twists I have seen since it rained on my wedding day, Google CEO Sundar Pichai was so badly triggered, he cut his vacation short to come back and fire the engineer that penned the memo. Bravo. Here is an excerpt of what Pichai posted on his blog. Diversity date, August 8th, 2017. Note to employees from CEO Sundar Pichai. This has been a very difficult time. I wanted to provide an update on the memo that was circulated over the past week. First, let me say that we strongly support the right of Googlers to express themselves, and much of what was in that memo is fair to debate, regardless of whether a vast majority of Googlers disagree with it. However, portions of the memo violate our code of conduct and cross the line by advancing harmful gender stereotypes in our workplace. Is the irony here really lost on Pichai? I mean, seriously? We're open to discussing ideas, except these ideas. Wow. So that brings me to now. A resistance is forming and doing the only thing left: protest. It's time to march on Google. Google is a monopoly, and it's abusing its power to silence dissent and manipulate election results. Their company, YouTube, is censoring and silence dissenting voices by creating ghettos for videos questioning the dominant narrative. We will thus be marching on Google. This falls in line with not only what I discussed in my last video, but also several leaks regarding this election. So on August 19th of 2017, there will be a march on Google in an attempt to rip the gags off of our mouths, freeing the silenced voices and letting us all be heard in what hopefully can save this platform. If you're in one of these areas, stop by. It might be fun. If nothing else, it'll be a hell of a show. GoogleTube has started a new Red Scare by banning and censoring and deplatforming any voice they don't agree with. If they keep doing this, the platform will die. I'll be here till the end, or until they start hiding my videos. If you are interested in the Google letter or the March on Google, I'll put links in the description. As always, stay awake, stay alert, and remember, we are the new counterculture.